All right. Good afternoon. We're excited to have everybody here with us today for today's webinar, the 60-day captive insurance countdown and why it's more important than ever. I'm Randy Souther. I'll be your host today. I'm joined by my colleague at CIC Services here, Chris Gallo. Chris, you want to tell everybody hi? Yeah.
Yes, hi. Nice to be here today, Randy. Thank you.
Good to be here. Yeah. Good deal. So I want to remind you a couple things for housekeeping. Do keep your computer phone on mute, unless you're asking a question, in which case we'll be glad to have you come off mute and ask that question. But on a few of these calls where somebody forgot that they weren't on mute, maybe had to go answer the door, the dog started barking, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely be respectful of everybody on here if you can. And then also, we will pause and give moments for questions. This is a Zoom, so you can type your questions in the chat bar, which will give me a little pop-up, and we'll definitely field those as they come. All right, with all that said, let's dive in. So Chris, you want to give a little background on yourself? We'll tell you about your host today, and that way you know a little bit about us before we dive in. Go ahead, Chris.
Sure, Randy. Thank you. Yeah, just commenced a 35-year regulatory career with the Connecticut Insurance Department, where I spent 28 years regulating traditional insurance companies and the last 8 years regulating captive insurance companies. But I tell people the one main lesson I learned over those 35 years was the critical importance of sustainable liquidity, cash flow in any enterprise. So I'm just looking to tell people how critical important it is for captives as well. But good to be here. Thank you, Randy.
Yeah, Chris, awesome to have you as well. Quick background on me. My name's Randy Souther. I've been at CIC Services 10 years. Tell everybody that I learned risk management in the Army, where I was a tank commander 5 years and was responsible for soldiers and ammunition, fuel, big vehicles, moving lots of distance. So that's really where I got a start in risk management. I've been here 10 years, worked quite a few corporate stints, and am honored to be your host today. So we're glad you're here. Now, no presentation would be complete without some disclosures. So I'm going to put these on the screen. I'll gladly send you the slides. We can have your attorney talk to our attorney if you'd like about the disclosures around captive insurance. I'm sure they wouldn't surprise you. So let me tell you a little bit about CIC Services before we get to the meat of today's discussion. CIC Services is a captive insurance company manager. In simple terms, we help businesses in the middle market set up and own their own insurance companies and hold on to more of their hard-earned profits and better protect their business. And we currently manage right at 150 insurance companies across the U.S. and we're honored to serve those businesses, the business owners, and certainly the employees that are counting on them to be there. Very important. You might note here all these headlines. If you've looked us up, you probably have seen our battle against the IRS. The Internal Revenue Service issued what amounted to just a harassment order against captives called 2016-66, created a lot of filing requirements, really a discriminatory move against small insurance companies when they weren't badgering large insurance companies. We sued that illegal notice. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, where we defeated them 9-0. And then it went to district court where their notice was vacated, which is basically means struck down. We're pleased with what the courts have decided. And right now, there are many industries that have been abused by the IRS that are suing them because the IRS has largely acted with impunity in many illegal ways against many industries. Captives aren't the only one. And so I hope that we will see pushback against tyranny. And that the IRS will be lawful and then provide reasonable guidance to insurance companies versus trying to simply harass people who are following the plain written tax codes and law codes around insurance. So that's worth noting as we start. And we're pleased that we won Captive Manager of the Year last year in the U.S. Captive Review Awards. We've been finalists many times, so we were very pleased to win it as well. So we feel like you joining our webinar, you're joining good company, a team that's seasoned in the captive industry and also really committed to the success of our clients. All right, Chris, that brings us to our 3 questions we're going to answer today. The first, what is a captive insurance company? The second, what is the significance of the 60-day countdown? And third, why it's more important than ever. So Chris, tell us about a captive, maybe in your words.
So sure. Another name for a captive is like a private insurance company. It's a privately held insurance company that is owned by the business owner. So whether it's a trucking company or a manufacturer for airplane goods, people have traditionally gone to the traditional market insurance company, but this is a vehicle whereby you could set up your own private insurance company, known as a captive insurance company, to insure your real risks in that captive insurance company.
Very good. So you get to own your own insurance company, insure your risks. I've got a note on here. They've been around since the 50s. So that's always worth noting, because in the early days, large corporations were really the only ones doing this. But really in the last 30 years, because different states have competed to license captives and some other law changes, have made it really a workable solution for small and mid-sized businesses. And that's largely where we focus, is on mid-sized companies that really need those benefits, right? So captives do everything you see on this page. They can replace commercial insurance, which can often result in savings or cost control. They can insure what we call enterprise risks, which are commonly uninsured, underinsured risks. We'll speak about a lot of those in this presentation. They can insure warranties, and often this is found money, especially if a business is selling somebody else's warranty. They can issue bonds. We've done this in both mining and in construction, and bonds are often just money down the drain, right? So this is a really good use of a captive. They can insure employee benefits and healthcare, which is another powerful use. And notice at the bottom it says any combination of the above. And one of the areas that I think is really important for a small mid-sized company that wants to use a captive is to spread the fixed cost of that insurance company over more than one insurance line, like we're showing here, or one insurance area, which makes the captive even more affordable and more efficient, for lack of a better term.
And so, Randy, one more point about the warranty. Randy mentioned it's found money. As a regulator, we saw for many years, it's had like a 95% profit ratio. That's why we encourage almost all of our clients, if they can consider warranting, if they make something or some type of service, we encourage them to provide that warranty service, bring it and put it into their captive, because it is a tremendous profit stream for the captive owner.
Absolutely. Very good point, Chris. So what is a captive in just like simple structure? A simple structure, business owner or owners own business or businesses, pay premiums and transfer risk over to insurance company that they also own. That's why they have access to profits from the company and from the insurance company. And then the insurance company issues insurance policies. It's pretty much that simple, but then it's going to get more complex. And we'll show you how as we dive in. Now, many of you on this call may be advisors to business owners. So some of you may be business owners. But if you are an advisor to a business owner, be it a CPA, a property casualty insurance agent, or a wealth manager or a financial advisor, one of the benefits of a captive, obviously there's a flow of funds from the business over to the insurance company, is that insurance companies are no different, captives are no different than, say, a large company like State Farm or Allstate, right? What do insurance companies do? They accumulate money to pay claims, but they're able to invest and grow that money. So for many of you, it may create assets under management, which it makes it a real win-win, a win for the client and a win for you as their advisor.
And Randy, you stated for many of you, Randy and I gave a presentation in April of 21, whereby we could confidently state that since 2005 to today, 99% of the captives formed by CIC Services has gone on to be a proven second profit center for the business owner. So not only may some of you, I would say 99% certain it's going to be a second profit center.
Right. Yeah. We have a long history of seeing captives become proven second profit centers every year. Absolutely. Good. So consider the following. Our U.S. government encourages small and mid-sized businesses to be ready for a wide range of threats. This chart's from ready.gov. It's not my chart. I didn't make it up. But what's interesting is if you look here, you'll realize there's a lot of risks that our federal government encourages small and mid-sized businesses to be ready for that they're probably not covered for on their commercial insurance. They may have some of these covered, but if you look across the line, there are many that often are perhaps cyber, supply chain breakdown, utility outage. You know, utility outage, it's kind of odd that we would even talk about that, but Interestingly, in the last 5 years, there's parts of our country that behave like a third world country, whether it's California wildfires, Texas deep freeze, and more parts of our country are actually experiencing blackouts and stuff, which can affect your business, frankly, as well. You see workplace violence, pandemic. Interestingly, this is from 2015. They were calling out pandemic disease, which had a huge impact. And we'll speak to that in a few slides. Loss of key people, information technology, reputation damage. These are all things that you can damage as well. Charlie, if you want, turn your camera off, and that way you won't be on here the whole. I'll just do it for you. There we go. Perfect. Good to have you join us, Charlie. Very good. And so you can see a lot of risks that often aren't insured, even things like a regulatory change, right? That you have no control over that could affect your business. And so these commonly uninsured, underinsured risks, or we call enterprise risks, can be broken up into two groups: operational risk. These are risks inside the business, and strategic risks, really outside the business, outside of your control. All of them can be addressed with an insurance company that you own as a business owner. So you see things like administrative action, just to be a government agency coming in and harassing you, auditing you, fining you for employment practices, an employee that alleges discrimination, harassment, are a wide range of challenges. And we're seeing this more often, frankly, and just being a very litigious society that we've become. Litigation defense, receivables, somebody doesn't pay that owes you money. Really important to ensure that if you can. I spoke about cyber reputation already. Product liability. A lot of manufacturers really don't have a good product liability policy, and more importantly, we offer product recall often out of the captive, so which is very expensive. You see errors and omissions, legal expense. Now think about, and that's just a handful, but this is not a full picture of all the risks that you could face. Strategically are things outside of business owners' control that could really upend their business, like business interruption. COVID was a classic example of that. Key contract termination, or a contract that you're really counting on, or a key customer, right? Subcontractors who default in the business, whether you're a government contractor, construction, or others. Losing key people, key employee, maybe key salesperson quits and takes a bunch of clients with them. That can actually be insured in your own insurance company. Things like supply chain interruption. This is a really big one for a lot of businesses today. And a lot are holding their breath, watching a war in Europe and concerned that it's going to spill over into the Pacific. Regulatory legislative changes, government actions that actually cost you more, cut off a section of your business, and pandemic broad form property. So wide range of places where businesses are often uninsured, underinsured. We call these enterprise risks.
And Randy, can you go back one slide?
Yeah, man.
So in a real life case about reputational damage, we actually have a client. There was a doctor's office, and there was one PA, and the PA, unbeknownst to the other doctors in the office, was selling drugs out the back door. And so basically the regulators came in, they shut them down, but because they had reputational damage as a coverage on their captive, they were able to hire a firm and state that, yes, it was true that one of their office was, but they was the only person who was prosecuted. Everyone else was exonerated. And through a lot of letters, articles, and they were able to recoup their reputation, and they were able to open up their practice again. But that reputational damage really helped them out during a very difficult time.
Yeah, reputation damage is a real risk, and it costs a lot of money to hire a PR firm to deal with it, and also hire a website expert firm to bury the story really deep with a lot of stories on top of it. That's pretty much how you have to deal with it. So, and a captive can fund that as a claim. Absolutely, good point. So, let's talk about taxation of insurance companies. I think that's important. We're talking about what a captive is. If you drive through almost any major city, you're going to see probably 3 huge buildings in any skyline, right? So maybe the football stadium, banks, but then obviously insurance companies. Well, there's a reason for that. Large insurance companies receive in premiums. They're able to loss reserve funds that they don't pay tax on because they're reserved for future claims. They invest and grow that huge pile of money, and then they eventually pay claims. So a small insurance company, and literally these are the words right out of the Internal Revenue Code, small, as created by Congress, insurance company that receives 2.4 million or less of premiums a year can actually elect to be taxed under Code Section 831B. Now, I want to make clear that you'll want to consult with your tax advisor for making that decision, but it is in the Internal Revenue Code. And if you make that election, then your insurance company can be taxed in a 0 bracket or 0% bracket. And this is really designed to help a small insurance company not have to go through all the compliance hurdles that it takes and the actuary calculations and the back and forth with the regulator that's needed to determine loss reserves, right? But instead just make it very clean to run a small insurance company, and also to help insurance companies that are protecting your business build up the reserves that you need for the unexpected things like COVID. So, you know, this is sort of a tale of two businesses. One of my favorite visuals of what a captive can do. So imagine these are the same business, same 10-year period, everything happens the same. The business on the left has some basic standard commercial insurance in the commercial market. And in this case, they have $1 million a year, and it doesn't have to be $1 million, by the way, but that's just a nice round number that we like to use, $1 million a year. And on the left, they just pay taxes and save the money. And over 10 years, it accumulates to about $5.9 million. Now on the right, the same business, same circumstances, makes one decision that's different. They decide to own their own insurance company. They layer on a whole lot of other insurance policies like you see in this green box. And they may even be able to start taking over some of these commercial policies, employment practices, perhaps picking up their general liability, maybe part of their property, in maybe the physical damage on their auto fleet, which many of our clients do right here in the insurance company. But they take that same $1 million, they buy insurance instead of paying taxes and saving the money. And in that same 10-year period, they end up with $10.7 million. So that's a pretty significant change. And we always call this, you know, captive math, right? There's very few places in life where you don't give up something to get something. But by owning your own insurance company, you actually get more insurance and more money. So that's really a very powerful theme: more insurance and more money. And then what happens to the assets in an insurance company that aren't paid out in claims or expenses? Well, the owner keeps all of them because the owner owns the insurance company. So it's very powerful.
And it's for those aforementioned reasons that Randy just mentioned. That's why 99% of our clients, the captive ends up being a second proven profit center for the business owner.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a great way to think about it. The captive is really a second proven profit center. So here's a lot of the benefits of captive insurance on this page. I'm not going to go through these, but I'll let you just glance at them and I'll be glad to send you the slides. But really, it's really just this simple: more insurance, more money, more protection for the business, for the employees, for the equipment, for the owner who owns the business, and then more money as well. What could be more powerful than that, right? All right. So what is the significance of the 60-day countdown? I mean, we do this countdown every year, and I think it's important that we do it every year, and there's a reason why. And the first is, and Chris knows this because he's a regulator. Chris, what are some of the things that go into setting up an insurance company? I mean, we can't do this in a day.
That is correct. Like, as we met, a captive is a real insurance company. There's real risk assessment, there's underwriting, there's actuarial review of the risk assessment findings. We have to actually form the legal corporation in a particular domicile, which would be a state. As regulators, we looked at the business plan. We have to actually issue a license to a captive insurance company, just like how we would issue a license to a traditional insurance company. Then we got to make sure it's adequately capitalized based on the amount of risk that we're putting in there. We have to ensure that the premiums are paid, policies are issued. So there is quite a bit of work to be done, but we have found that it can be done in the last 60 days of the year, provided that the client gets us the required information. Right, that's right. That's it can be done. Got to hustle, right?
And then the last bullet point, of course, is peace of mind. After all that effort, the business owner can be confident, and you as a business owner can be confident that you're protected. It gives you peace of mind, right? So what else is significant about the 60-day countdown? Well, many of you know the story of the goose that laid the golden egg. You know, a countryman basically had this goose that laid golden eggs. Unfortunately, he got greedy and cut the goose open, thinking he was going to get all the eggs, right? But If he had a good advisor, then he would have known not to do that and to take care of that goose, right? So if we think about your business is really the goose, and your goose is laying golden eggs. This time of year, businesses start thinking about how to allocate those golden eggs, right? Maybe some capital expenditures, right? Maybe dividends, owner profits, maybe employee benefits, bonuses, right? But if you think about all of that, what is one of the most logical things you would do if you were a countryman, if you had a goose that laid golden eggs? You would take a chunk of that money, a chunk of those golden eggs, and protect the goose, right? I mean, that is, if we're really being honest, we're really being logical, that makes a tremendous amount of sense. You'd build a giant fortress around that goose over time, right? Because that goose is valuable. Well, your business, if it's successful, is valuable as well. And remember, the best way to protect the goose is to have more insurance protection and more money. More insurance, more money is going to protect the goose for you. All right. Well, that brings us to our last section. Why is it more important than ever? Why is it more important than ever? Well, Chris and I kind of travel around sometimes, speak at a few conferences, and wherever we go this year, we've been polling, polling business owners, polling advisors. Raise your hand if you believe the world will be less crazy in the next decade. How many hands do you think go up? I haven't seen any yet. Have you, Chris?
No, because they're all muted and their cameras are off, but I'm sure they're raising their hands.
Yeah. So yeah, but when we survey business owners, raise your hand if you think the world's going to become more crazy in the next decade. It's almost 100% everywhere we go, right? That raise their hand. Yeah, it's going to be more crazy. And so that's why this is so important, more important than ever. I mean, let's just think about what's happened in really the last 5 years. California wildfire, Texas deep freeze, COVID-19, international conflict, civil unrest, COVID, human disasters like supply chain. Many of you remember the Ever Given getting stuck in the Suez Canal, right? I mean, what a nightmare that was for much shipping, and then all the container ships stuck off the coast of California ports and other ports. Credit risk on the increase. Cybersecurity, huge pipelines shut down on the East Coast because of hackers. Many hacking attacks. A lot of them fueled also by international conflict. Inflation, which has created nightmares for business owners, for the labor market. And that really feeds into a lot of commonly uninsured, underinsured risk, whether it's litigation, cyber, supply chain, some kind of government bringing fines and actions against you. Receivables, meaning because of the calamity that we're living through, maybe some of your key customers go out of business and don't pay you, which is very painful. Reputation damage, bigger issue now than it's ever been. And certainly still stinging from this. Many businesses were closed due to COVID-19. And they did maybe get PPP help, ERC help, but they weren't, most of them did not receive payments from their commercial insurance company for business interruption, right? So that's just a very quick overview. And if you look around the world today, there's really no reason to believe it's going to get better anytime soon. And especially just seeing the European crisis has escalated, and now there's threats of nuclear war, of all things. And let's pray that doesn't happen, and let's pray it doesn't spill over to the rest of us as well. So, and Chris and I talk about this quite a bit. Captive insurance, it works, and it works in a big way. And this is from an article that's published in Captive International that interviewed Sean King, an attorney, CPA, and principal in our firm, and Jana Patel from our firm as well. And what they note here is captive insureds were able to get their claims approved and paid quickly during COVID-19. So as many of you know, most commercial insurance that was addressing business interruption for most businesses only paid business interruption if their property was damaged, right? Well, if your property wasn't damaged, you didn't get paid. But many of our captive clients, as we talk about having more insurance and more money, had policies like catastrophic risk or broad form insurance, broad form property insurance, that not only covered property damage, but loss of access to property. Big difference. So their COVID-19 policies triggered, and across our captives that we manage, over $15 million in claims got paid to businesses that were affected when commercial insurance wasn't paying at all. That's a big deal. And across the 150 insurance companies we manage, not a single one of those businesses went out of business. Now, think about the odds of that. If you think about during the COVID-19 period, the number of businesses that went under, to have 150 not lose one, that says something. And a lot of that is the power of owning your own insurance company.
And Randy, go back one slide, please.
Yeah.
You can see that last quote which says the claims get approved and paid far more quickly. You have to understand, when a traditional insurance company writes a policy, if the policy language is written at the insurance company's benefit, not the insured's benefit. But when a client of ours forms their own captive insurance company, the policies are actually written to protect their business for their best interests. And that's why claims are able to get paid, approved and paid far more quickly, because it's to the benefit of the business owner.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. Now, I'll give you an example. We've got a client. It's in the multifamily home industry. So they own tons and tons of apartment complexes. And they have spent years battling with insurance companies to pay for storm damage that was clearly insured, right? So they've got all these buildings sitting around with blue tarps on the roofs, waiting for commercial insurance to pay and fighting it. So they've actually issued a policy from their captive insurance company that will fix the roofs immediately, claim being paid fast, as Chris noted, and then their captive insurance company will go against the commercial insured to get the money back, which may take some time, but at least their apartments won't have blue tarps everywhere. Instead, they'll look normal again, which it's very difficult to rent buildings with blue tarps on. I mean, just doesn't give a lot of confidence to your tenants, So very, very good point. All right. So in the article, it talks about 4 cases. One was the trucking company. And you think about it, their city routes got canceled because the city closed down many businesses. So that resulted in a need to shift the business, right? So the captive paid for that business interruption. Another was an ophthalmology practice that was deemed as non-essential, right? And took several $1 million hit of just lost business for a long period of time, which the captive covered. Pediatric dentistry, same thing, non-essential according to the government. And so they took a large revenue hit. And all of these business owners are quoted in the article. Be glad to send it to you. By the way, it is on our website. And then this is a really cool one, employee performance consultant. Their live events were canceled. And so many of their competitors were kind of tubed. But what they were able to do is take their claim from their captive and use that to fund a pivot in their business. So they were able to adopt much more rapidly with money and create really cool experiences that were more virtual, and then get back to live events faster. So they actually grew coming right out of COVID because their claim was paid and they had money while their competitors were just barely hanging on by a thread. So that's, and often laid off their people. They were able to retain their people. So that the captive is very powerful. And these quotes are worth reading. I'll be glad to send you the article as well. But really, none of our clients who had a COVID-19 loss went out of business during the pandemic. And that's a quote by Jana. She did all the research. It was really good. And here's a link to here's a link in here if I send you the slides if you want them. Okay. All right, very good. So I actually threw in a bonus question. We had 3 questions that we were going to answer, but it's worth discussing as we're here at the 60-day countdown. And this is more important than ever. And we've talked about why it's important. Who is a good candidate to own a captive insurance company? Who should consider owning a captive? Well, remember our golden goose analogy, right? I mean, a business owner or a business that has a golden goose and it's laying golden eggs is likely a good candidate. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, if you're a successful middle market business that has something to lose, then a captive may be a good fit. If you're in a startup mode and you're just getting off the ground, your exit strategy is quit, right? But once you've got a business that's successful, that's making money, it's worth holding on to, then it's absolutely worth protecting as well, right? So what we find, most businesses, if they have gross revenue of 3 million or more a year, maybe 300,000 of golden eggs that they could allocate to protect the goose, should at least explore captive, right? At least explore it. Now, certainly businesses that are larger than 3 million or could allocate more than 300,000 a year to protect the goose are even better candidates. So if this describes you and your business, or it describes clients that you work with, they really ought to think about, should I at least understand what a captive insurance company is, and if it's a right fit for me and for my business. Now, if you are an advisor, what's in it for you? Well, certainly, deepening the loyalty of your clients is a huge part of serving them well, helping them protect their business. Obviously, if your client goes out of business because of a crisis, then you're going to lose your client, right? So helping them protect their business. If you're an asset manager, certainly what we call sticky assets under management. And we do, when we're working with advisors, we do often share fees, and we'd love to do that as well if you're an advisor. Okay, I see we've got a question in the chat bar here, so let's dive on that. War chest. Okay, you talked about a war chest. We think different. Yes, very good. Yeah, so Warren is one of our clients, and just really love working with Warren and his team. So one of the things that they've told me through the years is, as they've owned their own insurance company, they've really become much more strategic in how they think about the business. And I didn't mention the word war chest on the call today, but I have talked about it that way. Very often, if you read about Fortune 500 CFOs, they want to build up what they call a war chest, which is just some reserve funds that they can pivot with, right? So by owning your own insurance company, you can reduce your commercial insurance spend. You can control cost, maybe lower your health insurance costs as well, which a lot of our clients have done. But you're also able to insure uninsured, underinsured risk that rob money out of the business, and then build up money in the insurance company. And once that insurance company is mature, it can very much become a war chest that can support the business via dividends, via loans, or investment where necessary. So very good point there in the chat. Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
A little point about the sticky assets under management.
Mm-hmm.
There are some brokers, sometimes they might feel threatened by a captive formation. They feel as if they're going to lose the commission. So sometimes they don't even bring it to their client. And then when the client also discovers what a captive insurance is, sometimes they're so disappointed that their broker didn't bring it to them. They move to a captive and they get rid of that broker. But the prudent broker would be one to say, you know what, this is best for my client, and he could help form the captive with the client. And then also that broker's got that client for life because he provided such a long-term sustainable solution for that client's risks.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. Good. All right. So, American Express said, don't leave home without it. Many of you probably remember those ads. So we would say the same thing. If you got a successful business that's laying golden eggs, don't leave 2022 without a captive. This is a great time to really dig in. Think about owning an insurance company, protecting the business, being more strategic, and fundamentally having more insurance and more money, right? What could be more relevant in today's world and the crazy world that it is, and having more insurance and more money? So if you'd like a copy of our slides we covered today, you can shoot an email to Chris or me. Be glad to get these to you. If you have any questions, we'll be glad to tackle them. We've got a few minutes here for questions if we have any. You can type them in the chat bar. If you want, just unmute and ask your question. That'd be great.
And Randy, just like you said, more insurance protection and more money. And when I introduced myself, I mentioned the one lesson, my one takeaway of after a 35-year career was the critical importance of liquidity and more cash flow. And the captive insurance company provides both additional liquidity and cash flow. And that's why it's such a powerful tool for business owners.
Yeah, okay, we've got a question here in the chat bar. Can you expand on coverage for a service warranty? Yeah, you want to cover that, Chris? You want me to cover it?
So we're working with some HVAC contractors in Delaware, whereby their competitors offer just the 6-month limited warranty. So we're in discussions with them to offering a 5-year extended warranty. And we took a page from Toyota Motor Company. When Toyota Motor Company started selling their cars in the United States, they would warranty their car, but with that warranty, they had to bring it in for servicing, oil change, transmission fluid change, rotate the tires, etc. So we also tell these HVAC contractors who say, if you sell the extended warranty, we say it's got to, every spring they've got to have their air conditioner tuned up, and every fall they've got to have their heating system tuned up. So there's some revenue that comes along with that servicing. So the contractors are there day to day, they're watching it, they could see any type of problem. And by doing that, also now they've got an advantage over their competitors, because where the competitors offering the 6-month limited warranty, they are able to offer the 5-year extended warranty. So it leads to additional sales, additional annual revenue with the 2 services that are done. And since they do it themselves, that where it might cost someone maybe say $5,000 to get one job done, people know they could do it internally, they could do it for themselves for $1,000. So it ends up being a profit center. Yeah, in the insurance regulatory world, we always refer to loss ratios for certain lines of business, but warranty, we refer to it as a profit ratio because of how profitable it always was for the businesses. I hope that answers your question. Yes, captive friendly states. That's an excellent question from Bill. We go through extensive work. Just like there's good doctors and bad doctors, we feel that there's extremely business-friendly, consultative, innovative domiciles. And there are some domiciles that may be more regimented. We really try to steer our clients to those domiciles that have a proven track record of being business-friendly, consultative, and innovative.
Yeah, and we've been through the research we're done, we've been big fans of North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, Utah. Those are some of the domiciles that we've found regulate the captive to make sure that it's done right, but also are business friendly. That's not to say there aren't others. South Carolina also is a state that we enjoy working with. So but that doesn't mean that they're the only ones, but those are the ones that we have the most experience with. So we could certainly speak to that. And then might have missed it. Did you cover tax trail advantage when a pass-through creates a captive? Yes, I guess I can speak to that very briefly. We didn't spend a lot of time on taxes here in this discussion, but pretty much all insurance companies, not just small insurance companies, have favorable tax treatment, provided they're operating a legitimate insurance company, and it's viewed that way for federal income tax purposes. So whether you're a large insurance company, and large is sort of the LARGE, so a large insurance company can make an 831A election. They can loss reserve, invest that money that they've reserved, grow it, and then eventually pay claims. And then a small insurance company can make an 831B election. That part of the Internal Revenue Code's been around since 1986, so it's not new. And under 831B, then the business can be taxed in a 0 bracket on the underwriting profit. So certainly, if you're running a legitimate insurance company, then that insurance company can build up more money than the parent company can. And that's why we talk about having more insurance and more money. John, I saw your note about why not Missouri. Chris, I don't know a lot about Missouri, but certainly we could explore that as a domicile. John, it's great to have you on. So I know you've talked with Chris some as well.
Well, Randy, you stated that doesn't mean that there aren't other states that are good.
That's right.
These are the ones that we've have domiciled captives, but
Yes,
absolutely, John
yes.
Talley, we got the world of respect for John Talley in the state of Missouri, what he did for Missouri.
Yeah, yeah. So we're not throwing rocks. California, to my knowledge, does not license captive insurance companies, unless that's changed, Chris. There's about 38 states that do. I don't think California makes the list.
Yeah, California does not have a captive law. That's number one. And all you have to do is what Elon Musk did with his company to answer that question as well.
Good deal. So do captive insurance companies come under the jurisdiction regulations of the state they are domiciled? Do other states have a say over the captive insurance company? If yes, what are the challenges we could face? Okay. Chris, you want to tackle that one?
So that's the unique thing, the advantage about captive insurance is that it is just domiciled in one jurisdiction and they handle all the regulation of that particular captive. So there are not intersections from other states or inquiries from other states. It's just domiciled in one jurisdiction. Now, there is one type of captive, a risk retention group captive. Say, for example, if it was a trucking company, that type of captive is also domiciled in one particular state. However, in order to have coverage in the other states, that particular risk retention group would have to be registered in each state that the trucking company would be traveling through. But all the other captives, the non-risk retention group captives, is just domiciled and regulated by one state.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting, because sometimes this question can be confusing. States can, insurance is regulated by the states, not the federal government. So each state has a Department of Insurance that regulates insurance in their state. And so there are some coverages that the state requires to be admitted in that state. So for example, auto insurance has to be admitted in the state and a captive may not meet that standard. Work comp has to be admitted by that state. So they want to make sure, states have a consumer protection interest. They're going to act in the interest of the businesses and the people in their state. So, you can't just set up a captive and then go write auto insurance in somebody else's state. So I think that's important to note. The exception might be the RRG, the risk retention group Chris alluded to. And then importantly, captives, usually when they start out, they aren't rated. So you may have types of coverage where somebody is requiring a rating to give you a contract perhaps, or to let you operate. Maybe a bank requires rated insurance to give you a mortgage. So I do want to make sure some captives, especially early on, may have limitations in that they may not be admitted or rated. Certainly as they grow, build up financial strength, they could become rated and admitted, but that's an application process, right? Okay, so we got a few more questions. How are premiums established and can they change annually based on business cycles, good year, bad year? Yeah, good question. So yes, so premiums are, there's really kind of a process we go through that Chris shared, where we assess the risks of the business, look at if there's commercial policies that can go into the captive as well. All the insurance coverages are underwritten, which is sort of a way of establishing that risks are insurable, what type of insurance policy would address them, what are appropriate limits. So there are risks that aren't insurable, and all insurance has to have economically measurable risk, like we can't insure your memories, unfortunately, or things like that, or your emotions, although a court may decide to pay you on those. And certainly, insurance, people don't think about this, but insurance is a variable expense. If you have a bad year, you might cut back on marketing. If you have a bad year, you might cut back on insurance too. And people do that now. Maybe they take a high deductible, for example, or decide, in some cases, they may decide to not buy insurance. And maybe one year you have a strong year and you buy cyber insurance, and next year you have a bad year and you don't. So it is a variable expense. You can adjust it, provided you're operating within your contracts and the law. Like if you're going to drive on Tennessee roads, you got to have insurance to do that. Okay. Can you provide a list of domicile states? Yeah, we can. There's 38 that license insurance companies. I think Chris has a big report on those. So if you'll send us an email, Chris can share which states license insurance companies. Does Texas allow captives? Yes, Texas not only licenses captives, But you can certainly, be a Texas resident, have an insurance company. If it's outside Texas, Texas may want you to pay taxes to them. So that is a possibility. Really, every state theoretically could impose taxes on captives outside their state. Some do, some don't. Okay, John says 39 that allow captives to be formed. Thank you, John. I think that's gone up one. All right, it was 38 last time I looked. If you identify new inherent risks, would you have roadblocks with regulators?
I'd say no. I mean,
No,
if we
no, I don't think so.
risk, we send a business plan change to a particular, whatever state it is. Say if it's Utah, we send a business plan change to the regulator, say, hey, we've come up with this new risk. We would like to start insuring this in the captive. The regulator will sign off on that business plan change request, and it could be covered on a going forward basis.
Yeah, very good point. It's interesting. This is a great question because captives have often led the way on new risks. In other words, they were writing risks before the commercial market could really catch up. And think about it, the commercial market needs a lot of data to be able to accurately price the risk, and they're going to be much more risk averse. And as Chris mentioned, most commercial insurance companies are writing insurance for their benefit. And most business owners that own a captive, really, you kind of flip that script. The captive is there to serve the business, right? Very different versus, say, an insurance company that's just serving shareholders and wants to make profit and get a CEO with a big golden parachute, right? So, captives led the way on cyber coverage when cyber first started emerging. Now commercial insurance is catching up. And so captives have led the way on many new emerging risks. And the key is, can it meet the definitions of real insurance? And, in kind of a simple framework, real insurance has to have, a measurable economic impact of whatever that loss is. It has to also have fortuity, which means something happens that we didn't expect to happen. That's sort of a fancy way of saying what fortuity is. What fortuity means is something surprised us, and we could measure the economic impact. And if you have those two variables, then it's very often possible to create an insurance program around it. I would suggest that most regulators that I've worked with, if you can present those to them and then draft a policy that makes sense, that they will approve it. Okay, good questions though.
I can tell our audience was really paying attention today with all these questions.
Everybody was paying attention. Good. It's really been a pleasure to talk with all of you today and field the questions. Very exciting time to think about captive insurance. So many risks that businesses face. Rising insurance costs, and many of those could go into a captive insurance company. We're seeing more and more of that. Very difficult time. So nice presentation. Love the Golden Goose. Good. Thank you so much. Thanks, John. Appreciate that feedback. Well, it's we've been at it 50 minutes, and please ask for the slides or let's set up a call. I'd love to talk with you all, and have a fantastic rest of the week.
Thank you, Randy.